All right, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Captain Stephanie Meno, Registered Dietitian for 62nd Medical Brigade. The purpose of this session is really just to have an open discussion with everyone to address any nutrition questions that you might have. So there really isn't any kind of guided prompt for this or slideshow or anything. We're just going to be here to field any questions you have. So it's myself, and then also on the line we have Lieutenants Paul Holthouse and Mia Stukenborg, and all three of us are holistic health and fitness dietitians. So we're embedded within brigades across the installation. Like I said, I'm with 62nd Medical Brigade, and I'll go ahead and let the others introduce themselves.
You can go ahead, Mia.
Sorry, my dog is barking in the background. I'm Lieutenant Stugenborg. I'm the dietitian over at 1-2 Striker Brigade on JBLM. Hey, come here. Oh, sorry, she wants food, guys. I apologize. I've been at JBLM for about 2 years now. I was at Madigan prior to going over to 1-2, so I'm one of the HF dietitians. I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, so my name is Lieutenant Holthouse, Paul Holthouse. I'm over at 16th Combat Aviation Brigade. I saw an Arojo on here. Miss Arojo, are you related to Chief Arojo over at 16th Cab by chance?
Yes, I can proudly say yes.
Awesome, yeah. Tom is awesome. So he's our CW5 over there at 16 Cab. So he's been a great asset to us and supportive of our HF program. So much appreciated to him. Me, what did I do? I've been out at JBLM for I don't even know how long now, like a year and a half, something like that. I spent about 9 months at Madigan first, and I just transferred over to 16th Cab in when was it, November, something like that. So I've been in an HVAC position for a couple months now, getting this set up. A little bit about me. I did my undergraduate at University of Wisconsin, go Badgers. And then my graduate school was from Baylor University through the Army. So.
Yeah, thanks, team. So background on myself, like I said, registered dietitian, holistic health and fitness, currently with 62nd Med Brigade, but I've been on Joint Base Lewis McChord for 5 years now. I started at Madigan, moved over to 1-2 Striker Brigade for the initial H2F pilot in 528th Infantry Battalion for a couple years, and now I'm at 62nd, originally from Ohio, got my undergrad at University of Akron, and then also Baylor, Army Baylor program for a graduate degree. So we'll go ahead and open up the discussion. So if anybody has any initial questions for us, just feel free to shout those out. You can raise your hand, put it in the chat box, whatever you're comfortable with.
Well, hi, good afternoon. My name is Lieutenant Colonel Mears. I work over here in First Corps G6. Just kind of a question, something I've been working with over the last several months regarding, there's lots of different, popular fad diets out there or whatever, different things. I was curious about some of the latest information or comparisons between like your intermittent fasting, and I know that there's different levels of doing that, and as opposed to the other methods of, smaller meals more often throughout the day type of thing, especially when it comes to either performance or weight loss and those types of deals. Because just kind of curious as to what the latest and greatest is on that.
Paul or Mia, either one of you want to jump on that one?
Sure, yeah, I can talk a little bit about it. I'll start by saying it really depends on your goals. Intermittent fasting, they've shown a lot of positive effects from a metabolic standpoint, possibly reduced risk of like diabetes and improving insulin sensitivity. So working with it from that sense, as well as a weight loss standpoint. The one thing I will say with intermittent fasting is if you're looking for maximized performance, it might not be beneficial. You're going to have to kind of work that eating window per se around your workouts, because we do want some carbohydrates possibly before, especially if you're doing a longer workout that's lasting longer than like 45 to 60 minutes and it's pretty high intensity. You're going to want to get some carbohydrates in before, possibly during as well. And then following exercise, you're going to want to get at least, 20 to 30 grams of protein and then some carbohydrates as well to replenish that muscle tissue and glycogen. So with intermittent fasting, if you can kind of move an eating window surrounding your workouts, it might be beneficial to some people. Some people really enjoy it. If you're feeling like you're starving and then you tend to overeat later in the day, it might not be beneficial for you. So it's really just an individualized type of program there with the intermittent fasting. I have a lot of soldiers come to me for that. And then with what was the other question? Keto. We're talking about keto.
Not necessarily keto, but more
Okay.
just, like eating smaller meals like more often throughout the day, like 6 small meals. And it's almost kind of the opposite to where you're keeping your metabolism going that way, as opposed to giving your metabolic system a break through the intermittent fasting, is kind of how I've been kind of described it.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody else wants to chime in on the 6 small meals a day. I think from my understanding, the latest in the research is it's really looking at a whole day and looking at your specific goals. And you can hear my dog whining in the background because he wants attention as well. I'm so sorry about that.
I'll jump in on this one, sir. So yeah, I think it all comes down to practicality as well. So for some people, 6 small meals a day is just a really unrealistic goal because they have a hard enough time just getting in 3 meals a day. But like Paul said, it comes down to the overall nutrient intake, not even on a looking at it from a daily perspective, but just like a weekly perspective, right? So trying to meet all your nutrition needs over something like the span of a week. So whether or not you can do that with 3 meals, 6 small meals, it really just depends on the practicality for the individual. But from a perspective of refueling and fueling for performance, if you're somebody who does like 2 workouts a day, say you do PT in the morning and then you do additional PT after work in the evening time, eating more frequently smaller meals to both fuel for and then recover from, like Paul was saying, with the carbs and protein, including more frequent meals, smaller meals throughout the day might be more beneficial to recover you and then prepare you for that second bout of physical activity. So it really is such an individualistic thing, and either one could potentially work for somebody, just given like their daily routine. For most soldiers, intermittent fasting is a struggle, just given our schedule being kind of dictated for us in regards to when we do physical fitness, when we have to be awake and go to work and all of those things.
No, exactly. And I think was my biggest challenge doing the intermittent fasting is you work out early in the morning, and then if it's a big change as far as your regular meal habits with your family and stuff like that, as traditional wise, to limit down that time. Yeah, so that was the biggest challenge, because then if you don't eat anything after a workout or prior to, you're pretty smoked and you can tell a difference. But that's all good. So I appreciate those answers. That helps. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, sir. And then I see Major Schwemmer, you had a question, ma'am?
Yes, I do. Thank you. First of all, thank you so much for taking the time and doing this. Very appreciated. So my goal is really optimal health and fitness, and I'm interested a lot in like repair, muscle repair, kind of recovery as well. I personally have to stay away from gluten, and I've noticed kind of recently, like when I have heavier meals with a lot of fat in them, my heart, kind of beats harder, which to me just seems like my body's working harder to try to process through all that food, especially with things like meats, dairy, and meats, dairies, like nuts, some of the big nuts, peanuts that have a lot of fat. Talking to some of my coworkers over here, those people who've done either pescatarian diet or have done like a vegan type diet have kind of sworn by the benefits to them in muscle recovery and reduction in inflammation, particularly after workouts. I've been considering doing something like a pescatarian diet But with all the stuff on the news about mercury in fish and stuff, I'm not sure that that's a good option either. If you were very interested in muscle repair, reducing inflammation, what direction would you kind of go as far as diet for, for just optimizing your health and fitness?
I think, ma'am, that's a great question, and there's a lot of different facets there to what you're asking about, personal factors that play into the decisions that you make, and personal preferences, personal feelings when you eat food. So again, a blanketed response might not necessarily fit the general population. So it really does depend on like what works best for you. And as far as like mercury in fish, just trying to get fresh fish more often, and things that are, sustainably sourced, and not maybe mixing it up. Maybe if you want to have predominantly fish, like maybe 3 times a week, and then you could do a vegetarian protein the other days of the week, or if you want to do something like chicken, if it doesn't bother you. But ideally, after a workout to refuel, you would have, like Paul was saying, you'd have like the 30-ish grams of protein, and then you'd have anywhere between, 60 grams of carbs plus, depending on how challenging your workout was. So typically for like a long endurance, I would do a 4-to-1 ratio of carbs to protein. For something more strength focused, maybe a 2-to-1 if you're not working as hard or being as active consistently. So it just kind of varies on the day. But then eating adequately during physical activity if it's necessary. So if you're doing a long endurance event, something that's lasting especially over 90 minutes, getting that 30 grams of carbs every 30 to 60 minutes to keep you fueled during, and that'll make it easier for you to recover because you're not putting yourself in such a deficit. So it's that post meal that's really important. But if you need to fuel during, having about 30 grams of carbs before is also going to help prevent that debt from getting too big. But then eating really well throughout the day, and then focusing on lots of fresh fruits and vegetables, like whole sources of grains. If fat is something that bothers you, maybe minimizing the amount of dietary fat you consume throughout the day. And you can play around with different variations of diets, and then it's a good idea to like log what it is that you're eating along with symptoms. So you can kind of tell, like, this doesn't really sit too well with me. Maybe this is a really good post-workout snack that, I felt recovered with, or I ate this during my workout and it caused some GI distress. So you can start to learn a lot about how you react individually to things by keeping that journal, because we're all so different in how we can eat and recover, and what works for us and what doesn't. So does anyone else have anything to add to that?
No, I agree. And if you look at reducing inflammation, back to what Captain Meno said, I think one of the biggest things is like whole foods. Plant-based can definitely help. Obviously, the different phytonutrients and different antioxidants that come from plant-based products, your fresh fruits and vegetables are going to be beneficial for reducing inflammation in the body. But if you want to move towards something like a whole foods pescatarian or plant-based diet, just ensuring that you are getting those vegetarian sources of protein in order to maximize your muscle recovery there. So looking at you on an individual level, how much protein you might need, and then looking for ways to maximize that through those plant or pescatarian type sources, fish, etc. I don't know, Mia, if you have anything to add or not, but.
I think you guys covered it really well. I would have said something similar. So I definitely kind of agree with your recommendations. And kind of like Captain Minnow said, everyone's different. So there's really no like one blanket statement that's going to work well for everyone. So I do think kind of keeping a tab on maybe what's sitting well with you after workout, what's not, is a good way to kind of really figure out for yourself like what's going to work best for you, especially from a recovery standpoint.
Okay, acknowledge. So looking more at making sure I keep the right ratio, and then ensuring that I maintain whole foods and what works best with my body versus a blanket. What foods might work better overall? Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you for the question, ma'am. Any other questions from the group?
I have a question. Hi, this is Kathy. Yep. I was just listening to the Fueling for Health before this session, And what was suggested was 0.5 ounces per pound of body weight. So that's approximately, 64 ounces. But now they have these bottles that are 1 gallon. What do you think of drinking a gallon of water a day? Is that overhydrating? Because if it's recommended, approximately just a half a gallon, is that sufficient enough?
So I can jump in on this one. So with hydration, there's going to be a few factors, right? It's going to be based on your body size, your muscle mass, and your overall exercise output throughout the day. So someone who doesn't exercise during the day might not need even 64 ounces, and is a smaller person. Someone who's much heavier, carries around a lot more muscle mass, and exercises twice a day is probably going to need a lot more fluids per day. I think the biggest thing, it's pretty hard, and you guys can jump in and correct me if I speak out of turn here, but it's pretty hard to overhydrate, especially throughout the day and in the United States and stuff, moving around so much, we get caught up. It's pretty challenging to overhydrate as long as you're getting adequate electrolytes and stuff from a well-balanced diet. It's pretty challenging to overhydrate. So a gallon a day, I don't personally see any risk of quote unquote overhydration. I don't know if Captain Menno or me, if you guys have anything to add on to that.
No, I would agree with you, Paul, on that. Because usually, yeah, the general recommendation, so half your weight in pounds and ounces, and then any like workout or activities you do on top of it, you'd want more. And then also, yeah, the electrolytes is the big thing, just to make sure you're getting enough of those if you are going to be drinking a lot more water, and depending on your activity levels too.
Yeah, and I think that just paying attention, like, do you have a water source with you? Are you drinking it consistently throughout the day? And then also, how are you feeling? Like, are you getting headaches? Are your lips getting chapped? Like, are you feeling thirsty quite often? Because those are all signs that you're probably not getting enough water. I mean, if you're going to the bathroom every 2 hours, you're probably drinking enough water. You don't necessarily want your urine to be like so clear, because it's like overly diluted. So just kind of like listening to your body for how much to drink, because it will change. It'll vary depending on how hot it is outside, how active you are. There's lots of things that are going to change fluid needs. So just drinking consistently is, key, and not worrying too much about the ounces, but and then eating foods that have like high water content, like different fruits and vegetables, can also help you get your hydration needs in for the day as well.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
So that water one was a pretty good question. I'm Jen. I'm from Oklahoma. You did great at the last presentation, by the way. But my question to you is, we're hearing a lot about probiotics and gut health and stuff like that. Do you guys have any thought processes on the whole gut health and the way we feel when it comes to nutrition?
I hate to keep going back to the whole, plant-based whole foods diet explanation, but if you eat plenty of fruits, vegetables, and whole grains, you're probably going to have pretty good gut health. And if you want to include in some like fermented foods or yogurt that have like those natural probiotics in there, that's great. I think that there is a lot that the gut does, because we look at the gut and how interconnected it is with all the different systems in the body. And if you have that gut like unbalance of bacteria, it might throw off some other things going on. But as long as you're eating a really consistently good diet with, again, whole foods, lots of fruits and vegetables, you should be pretty well off. And taking additional supplements like probiotics to improve your gut health is may or may not be beneficial, just given how unregulated supplements are to begin with. And we don't know, like, it could say there's 1 billion colony forming units, but it might not even have half of that, because they're so unstable when they create probiotic supplements anyway. So But yeah, if you feel as if you're having like digestive issues, or you think that something is going on, and you're struggling with that, definitely go see your primary care physician. But looking at your diet and how much fiber you get in throughout the day could be really crucial to gut function, and then water intake too. So anyone else have anything to add? Okay, hopefully that answered your question.
It did, yes, thank you. But I'm going to spin on that one a little bit further. Genetically, I'm 49 years old. Genetically, I have high cholesterol. I do not want to get on any statin because I don't want to like lose my ligaments and tendons and just feel like garbage. So what would you guys suggest? I eat good fats, I eat leafy greens, I don't eat a lot of meat. I think I'm doing everything right. Do you guys have any like one tip that I can take away, but like, ooh, Jen, this might help with your cholesterol?
I do want to remind everyone that we are recording. So I'm hoping that everyone's comfortable sharing this information and having it be recorded. So just to throw that out there. And I don't want to give like super personalized nutrition advice if I don't have the ability to like fully assess somebody, but in general for high cholesterol, including sources of soluble fiber specifically, and that is like you're going to find that in like oats, for instance. So, or like another good soluble fiber. There's a lot of yogurts now that have they're made with inulin, so it's like a prebiotic soluble fiber. That specific fiber can help with reducing cholesterol. So just adding in more whole grain products throughout the day, specifically something like oatmeal, and again, lots of fiber from fruits and vegetables is going to help with that cholesterol reduction. Specifically, that's like something you can try including if you're not. But do you guys have anything else to add to that?
No, I think the soluble fiber is the big one. So especially whole grains, and then like fruits that would be higher in soluble fiber. So things like apples, bananas, oranges. And then also like beans is another good source of soluble fiber. So adding any kind of beans into your diet too can be another way to get some more of that in.
And I will say, oh, go ahead.
Okay. I was also just going to say genetics do play a really big role in
Yep.
cholesterol. So you can do all the right things from a dietary standpoint. And the other thing I would say is exercise. Exercise can bring down specifically like your LDL pretty significantly. The recommendation is at least 6 days a week, 30 to 45 minutes. So those are just my 2 points on that. And sometimes you can even do everything right and your cholesterol can still be high because genetics do have a very big role in that one. And I see that quite often. People get frustrated with it because they're like, I'm doing everything right. And it's kind of a roll of the dice with that one. And you might need to go on a statin, and you can talk to your PCM about statins. They're, from my understanding, very safe, very effective. So it's my 2 cents on cholesterol.
And that's where I'm at right now. Like I eat right, I exercise, I do everything right, and you just nailed it. It's like, dang it, I'm just not getting anywhere. So thanks, guys.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate thing. I mean, my dad is the same way. He's been healthy. He was in the Army for a long time and exercises and eats good, and just his liver doesn't, regulate his cholesterol very well. And typically that's what we see is the liver just produces too much, and it's not even really the dietary cholesterol that you eat that's causing the problem. But exercise can also help to increase your good cholesterol, your HDL. And there's not really a whole lot you can do from a nutrition standpoint to increase HDL. It's mostly exercise. So keeping up your physical activity is going to be really good for keeping that good cholesterol up. And sometimes your total cholesterol might seem higher, but if your good cholesterol is really high, that number is a little bit less important than the overall ratio between the HDL and the LDL. So paying attention to that is also really important. Good question so far, though. Anyone else have anything?
Someone has their
hand
raised.
Yeah. Hi, this is Megan Young. So I've read a little bit on micronutrients and the importance in micronutrients and a balanced diet. For someone who doesn't spend an awful lot of time meal prepping and counting, do you have any just easy to execute tips when when shopping, when figuring out what we're going to have as a family for our meals, to just make sure we're getting a good balance of those micronutrients.
So I would say for me, like my big recommendation when I have people kind of asking about that, if you're incorporating a lot of the whole grains, fruits, vegetables into your diet, into a lot of your meals, and trying to get that balance between carbs, fats, and proteins, you're gonna get enough micronutrients that way, and making sure you kind of have a variety of a lot of different foods. So not necessarily eating the same thing every single day, because then you might be missing something. So really that variety piece is the biggest thing, especially when you're trying to think of like fruits and vegetables to have, just trying to mix it up. Same thing with whole grains, and then any kind of other protein sources and fat sources as well.
And the MyPlate method, so if you go on like the USDA.myplate website, they have a lot of great tips for meal planning for like families, and you can create plans to show you like how many servings of fruits, vegetables, whole grains, protein per day based on like your calorie goal. And you can do that for kids too, and make sure that like you're hitting those targets when you're planning your meals. But I really encourage like using that MyPlate method of like half your plate fruits and vegetables, a quarter whole grain, a quarter lean protein as like the foundation when you're meal planning. And then again, like Mia said, just getting that variety in of the different colors, paying attention to what produce is in season to kind of guide what you're getting. So looking at like what fruits are in season. So like if you try to buy like raspberries or blueberries out of season, it's like twice the price, and they're also not going to be as nutritious. So trying to buy things in season, and that can help cut down on cost as well. And also it'll taste a whole lot better. And going to farmers markets is big too. That can save you some money. And then a lot of times, like with the farmers markets, they can kind of talk to you about the produce and tell you how to use it. So you can get some good tips there. But yeah, and then involving the whole family in meal planning. So if your kids are picky eaters, or like if you know that it's a fight every time at dinner, having them get involved with figuring out like what it is you want to eat throughout the week, and giving them like one or two choices to make so that they feel kind of empowered with that. And then they'll probably be more excited to actually eat it. And then if you let them help you make the food, even better. So more hands-on time for them is a good thing.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other questions?
Hello, I was wondering if a military spouse can get an appointment with a registered dietitian?
That's a great question. Yes. So are you on McCord, or are you seen at Madigan?
Madigan.
Madigan. Okay. So the nutrition clinic at Madigan, you can definitely get an appointment with them. So you might need a referral from your primary care provider.
Negative.
So that's
Sure.
something that you can. Oh, you don't need it. No referral.
No, you can call the clinic directly. Do you have the number, Paul, or
It's
Yeah, I'll put the nutrition clinic number in the chat.
okay.
yeah, so
Okay.
you can call them directly, and the MSA at the nutrition clinic can schedule you for an appointment. I think they're currently doing either virtual appointments or in person, depending on what you want to. So there's options as well, that it should fit your schedule pretty well.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying that, because it used to be active duty only was self-referral, but that's good that they're letting spouses. So, but yeah, you can definitely go and utilize their services. And then additionally, the Army Wellness Center, they don't have dietitians, but they do have like nutrition classes, and they can provide you with some information there as well. And they have like the bod pod and the machine that will determine your calorie needs and all of that. So there's a few different resources you have on the installation.
Okay, thank you. Also, my school is looking for a registered dietitian to come and speak on February 18th. I don't know how to contact one of you guys to get that information privately to you, but if anyone would be interested, that would be cool.
Oh yeah, I'll throw my email in the chat, and then we'll put it out there and see if anyone is available and interested, and definitely can help out with that. So
Okay, thank you.
yeah, thank you. Okay, any other questions?
I have a question regarding the chat. I don't see that feature available. Is the chat open?
Oh, yes, ma'am. Is it not open? Let me
So
see.
usually you have to click it for it to open. There's like a little chat icon for my computer screen. It's like at the top, one of those icons, and then it should open on the side, but I don't know that it automatically opens.
Yeah, guys, there's just some functionality loss, I think, for some of our folks who don't have CBR accounts. So there are a handful of folks, especially if they have guests next to their name, that they don't have that chat function enabled.
Oh, okay. Well, let me read off the Madigan clinic number then, so that anyone has that would like it. So it's 253-968-0547, and then you'll hit option 2 to talk to the front desk receptionist. Don't hit 1; it'll take you to the TRICARE people. So 253-968-0547, option 2. And then my email is Stephanie, STEPHANIE .e as in Elizabeth .meno, MENO .mil@mail.mil. I did not know you didn't have the chat function. Okay. Thank you, ma'am, for pointing that out. Okay. Any other questions from the group?
Yeah, real quick, I'm sorry to go back again to that intermittent fasting piece. I know I think Lieutenant Holthouse mentioned that what do you recommend for soldiers, especially given our schedule, the early workout, and then if somebody's trying to do the intermittent fasting thing, what's kind of your recommendation on how they would go about that?
Yes, sir. So I'm all about working with what the soldier wants to do. So if they want to try a fad diet, I'm willing to work it with them and make sure that they're still getting all their macro and micronutrients and all that stuff. Just trying to, because if I tell them to eat a certain way, they're probably not going to do it anyway. So trying to work with them the best way that I can. So with intermittent fasting, when soldiers come to me, I really elaborate on the importance of the recovery nutrition portion where, hey man, like, hey soldier, right? Like you can't work out at 6 o'clock and then not eat till noon. Like that's not beneficial for your performance. That's not beneficial for your recovery. So if you're going to do intermittent fasting, let's look at your day. Let's look at when you PT, and then let's look at how we can build a plan around that. So for someone who only works out in the morning, I say, okay, you want to fast for, let's say 12, 16 hours a day. Let's slide your eating window to surround your PT session. So that's the way I kind of work it with soldiers. And if they're working out twice a day, it's going to be challenging because if they work out in the morning and in the evening, I personally probably wouldn't recommend intermittent fasting. I can usually get them to agree at least to something after explaining kind of the recovery nutrition portion where like, okay, well, I'll still intermittent fast, but after my workout in the evening, I'll just do like a protein shake and some fruit. I'm like, okay, we'll move from there, I guess. That's good enough for me. So that's kind of how I approach it, sir. Let me know if that answered your question or not.
So you're saying soldiers don't always do what you recommend them. I don't believe you. Yeah, I appreciate that. That does answer my question. I was curious because especially at dining facility hours, soldiers having access at certain times. I mean, that would, like you said, a second workout or whatever would definitely cause some problems there. So thank you.
Yeah, and I think like getting them to stop eating at like 7 o'clock at night is a challenge in and of itself because they're usually up way too late and they snack really late. So that's pretty challenging. But when they start talking about intermittent fasting, but they don't have the basics down and they're not sleeping well and things like that, it's trying to hammer home like the really important stuff and making sure, like he said, that they're getting in all their nutrition when they are eating, because that doesn't always happen. So, all right, any other questions from the group?
I see a hand raised.
Oh,
yeah. Hi. My name's Caitlin. I've been trying to figure out how to ask this question, so I'll do my best. But I'm a very active individual, a runner, do endurance running. I build muscle easily in like my arms and my legs, but I feel like my midsection is an area where I can't get it to change, and I feel like what I hear is like that carbs are my nemesis. I would also say that I'm a carbivore. Like I I need like bread to survive. But from like a mental and a physical aspect, what do you recommend for somebody who has a body type a little bit more like that, who needs those carbs to fuel, your fitness, but perhaps your body doesn't like those carbs in terms of your appearance. So what do you have as far as recommendations as types of carbs or anything?
I would say that's kind of where you want to focus specifically on getting those whole grains so that you're not like eating a lot of simple sugars like sweets and sugar sweetened beverages, because those will just spike your blood sugar really quickly and you'll get hungrier faster. But genetically speaking, we're all built a little bit differently. And so we all carry fat in different places. Like our bodies have fat cells, and the number of fat cells that we have doesn't really change over time. They just get bigger and smaller. The only thing that changes the amount of fat cells you have is liposuction, but I don't recommend that. So it's kind of unfortunate that we have this ideal body type that everyone ascribes to be, and like it's perpetuated on social media, and like you have to be this super lean six-pack ab type person when that's not realistic for everybody. Some people have a really, really hard time with trimming down abdominal fat, and like that's just sometimes the hardest type of fat cell to lose. And it takes a lot of concerted effort to do that. So it's looking at your goals, and like, are your goals oriented around fitness? Are they oriented around appearance? And then kind of determining like, are you really, like if it's really that challenging for you to lose the abdominal fat, and it would require a significant calorie deficit, like is that something that you would want to do that could potentially impact your performance, right? So there's like realistic goals that we have to have. But I would say that carbs aren't necessarily your enemy. It's just eating the right type at the right time. Like we're talking about fueling before physical activity and after physical activity with carbohydrates, making sure that you're getting in enough but not too much. And how do you know that? Well, ideally you would go and see a dietitian for that like one-on-one consultation to kind of get that information. But everybody's going to be so different. So your needs are going to be different than somebody else's, but it's not necessarily because your body hates fat. And I would also ask a lot of questions if I were to see you one-on-one about like your sleep, your stress, because all of those things deal with a hormone that we have called cortisol, and elevated levels of cortisol can cause abdominal fat retention. So that might be impacting it as well. There's like so many things that could go into like why that's such a problem area for you. But it would really take that one-on-one consult. But I wouldn't beat yourself up too much about it, because we all are built differently, and it's really sad to think that like we're all trying to fit in this really narrow image of what we think health is. Do either of you guys want to add anything to that?
No, I think you said great. I think if your goals are performance based, and you're meeting those from a performance standpoint, I mean, my goals are performance based, so I don't really worry too much about the rest of it, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
Yeah, I hope that answered your question with at least something for you to walk away with. But I would recommend, if you want to see a dietitian, you have the nutrition clinic number that you can call.
Yeah, that's definitely something that I've thought about and have been actually just looking into over the last couple of days. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Perfect. Yeah, awesome. Glad to help. Lieutenant Colonel Mashoff, I think your hand is still up. I'm not sure if you have a question, ma'am, or if that was still from the chat box comment. Just want to make sure we don't miss you.
I'll take my hand down now. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay, ma'am.
Hi.
All right. And
Do you guys recommend like a cleanse or detox every once in a while? I mean, I hear about this, you know, like people do something called Arbonne, 30-day, whatever. I can't remember what it's really called, but it includes like a cleansing thing, a 7-day cleanse. I don't know how you feel about that. I mean, is that something healthy or recommended, necessary? Should I waste my money on it? I don't know.
So at least for me, with a lot of those cleanses and stuff, I usually just say no right off the bat, just because you have to be very careful. And a lot of those, you're going to be restricting your intake so much, and you're just not going to be getting enough that you need. So really, just aiming more for that balance and that my plate that we talked about, and having fruits and vegetables and whole grains. Is generally more what I talk to with my patients versus some of those cleanses and stuff, because a lot of times they're just very restrictive, and kind of like you mentioned too, you're probably spending a lot of money on something you don't need to spend money on, when you can get the same benefits from just having a balanced diet and having some of those whole foods. And I don't know if you guys had something else.
No, I mean, so I always like to remind people that like we have a liver and it detoxes our body pretty well every day as long as it functions appropriately. Our bodies maintain this really great state of homeostasis where our cells are never going to be like too acidic or too basic. And so things like cleanses and drinking alkaline water to change your pH, like all of that stuff, all it really is a gimmick. And Arbonne, I believe, is a multi-level marketing company. And I would just hesitate to buy any supplement product. Like I said before, they're really kind of wish-washy with the regulations around supplements and how they're produced and manufactured and regulated. So I don't recommend supplements unless you have like a nutritional requirement, like you're deficient in something like vitamin D and you're prescribed that, or if you're going to get pregnant and want to take a prenatal. But yeah, supplements, like Mia was saying, like they'll say, hey, take this, but also follow an 800 calorie a day diet. I remember one of my bosses when I was enlisted was on this HCG diet where you inject yourself with hormones and then you eat 800 calories a day. And she was like, oh my gosh, I'm losing so much weight because these hormones. And I'm like, no, it's because you're not eating food, which you could have achieved without paying hundreds of dollars for injections. So a lot of those things just sound like really quick fixes that might appeal to especially soldiers who have to meet body composition standards. And you're like, oh, I can lose 20 pounds in 2 weeks. Let me go buy this supplement. But it's not healthy and not sustainable. So anything that says that you only do it for 20 days, like it's clearly not something you're meant to do long term. And what are you going to do when it's over, right? You're probably just going to go back to the habits that you had prior. And if those were unhealthy to begin with, what is that period of 2 weeks really going to do to get you healthier? So that's my 2 cents on the cleanses.
Thank you. That's what I wanted to hear.
I'm glad. Yeah, and I mean now with it being, right after the new year, you see this uptick in people who are selling this stuff and people who are buying it, because everyone wants to be healthier as a New Year's resolution, which is great. But finding those sustainable ways and really, like I'm sure you've probably all figured out by now that we're just going to keep saying the same thing: whole foods, lots of fruits and vegetables, whole grains, lean proteins, right? Like nutrition is not inherently like this mystical thing that you have to have a PhD to figure out. It's basic stuff. It's just getting people motivated to do the basics, and do them consistently. So it's the same thing with training. Like if you're trying to grow muscle, you just have to do training consistently. It's not like one program that's magically going to help you gain muscle mass. So yeah.
I've done cleanses. No, I mean I will say so I'm kind of an idiot though sometimes. Like I'll try stuff that like my soldiers tell me about just to see what happens and do it and kind of so I can see it from their perspective. So, but yeah, my 2 cents on cleanses. I mean, if you want to take and you want to juice all your own stuff and just do juice for 2 days, like you're not going to die, like you're going to be fine. But yeah, like how long is that going to last? If it makes you feel better and it kicks your butt back into gear, and like that's like your thing mentally that you need to do to get back on the right path after the holidays or whatever, then I'm like with my soldiers, like I'll tell them like that's okay, but just be conscious of all these other things that we've already discussed today. So it's my 2 cents. I don't know. I did it for a day and it made me feel cut or whatever. Like I didn't have a lot of, but it's also just because I ate like 400 calories the day before. So yeah, my stomach shrunk like it felt, so.
So you recommend it for one day? No.
I'm not saying I recommend it, but if, again, what I found working with soldiers and stuff is like, hey, how can, you're probably going to do it anyway. So like, if you need to do that to get yourself in the right mindset or whatever, to get back on a healthy path, and you're not doing it for an extended period of time, like if it's a 1 day thing and it makes you feel good, like you're going to be fine. Like you're not going to die, but do you need to spend hundreds of dollars on something? No, I'd recommend, like, if you're going to do it, go juice your own stuff versus buying some expensive powder that's may or may not be what it says it is.
And you're right. Mr. Orko would say the same thing. You don't need to spend that. Thank you.
I know. I've talked to them about supplements quite a bit, so.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. And I think that's a good point about, if it's getting you in the right mindset, like things like the keto diet, right? Inherently not ideal for soldiers given that it's super low carb, but it forces people to eat more whole foods, fresh fruits and vegetables and good quality protein sources. So if they're at least starting to get that out of it, where they're preparing more of their own food, focusing on getting, good, healthy food, that's one positive that we can get out of like the keto diet and start pushing people in the right direction. If before they were just eating like Burger King and shop at Tornadoes for breakfast, which is not an uncommon thing. So yeah, and I think Paul mentioned it before too. It's working with people where they are and what are you willing to give on or what are you not willing to give on, and how can we shape something that works for you.
This is Major Schwimmer again. Do you happen to have a list of nutrient-rich foods and kind of their tier? I know there used to be like Mickey's Ladder. I'm not even sure I'm saying that right, but just a list of foods where getting the most bang for our buck, nutrient-wise.
Do either of you two have anything like that on hand?
I think it's gonna depend on the nutrient that you're looking for, right? Because different foods have different densities of different nutrients. So there's something we talk about that's called calorie dense versus nutrient dense, and that's just the ratio of nutrients per calorie. So like something, for example, like a donut is very calorie dense because it's all sugar and doesn't actually provide your body with any micronutrients necessarily, like vitamins and minerals, versus something like fruits and vegetables, like you get a ton of micronutrients from, but really low in calories, right? If you can eat a lot of them. So I don't know if that's what you're looking for, but I don't have like a list, because the list is going to vary depending on the type of nutrient that you're looking to intake, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's kind of what I was thinking too. I mean, I don't know that I have an overarching like best foods, and we have this term that gets thrown around a lot, like superfood, as if it's for some reason going to like cure all ailments. But like I did my cooking demo today with quinoa, which is technically not a whole grain, it's actually a seed. But in terms of like the whole grain category, quinoa has some of the most micronutrients per serving compared to other types of whole grains. So it would be considered a quote unquote superfood in that sense. But getting the variety, like if you know that like you're specifically trying to target like calcium or folate or one of those specific nutrients, you can definitely find information on and different product categories too, because like fruits, vegetables, whole grains, meat, dairy, they all have varieties of different nutrients. So kind of looking at like the specific nutrient type and then what category of food you're looking for will help kind of narrow that list down a little bit more.
Okay, thank you.
All right, does anybody else have any more questions before we wrap this up? Been good discussion so far. Okay, well, I don't see any hands and I don't see anybody popping up, so I'll go ahead and wrap up the discussion, but I want to thank everybody for coming, for engaging and asking really good questions. I think that we get afraid to ask questions about things like nutrition out of like fear of being judged or whatever. And a lot of you opened up about some personal stuff. So I appreciate that because maybe somebody else was thinking it and just was too afraid to ask. So again, like I said, there's a common theme here that hopefully you all picked up on. And whenever you have, if you're in the military, if you have soldiers coming to you asking for nutrition information, the MyPlate recommendations are a really good place to start. And then if you happen to be in an organization that has a dietitian, 1222, 16 cab, 60 second, triple nickel will be getting one soon. 42nd MPs has one. And then 17 Fab, like they all have dietitians, so you can definitely refer soldiers there. But arm yourself with some basic information that you can share, or if you're a spouse, some things that you can share with your service member to help them be better. So we appreciate you taking the time, and Mia and Paul, thank you for being here. I appreciate having some additional folks to chime in and answer questions. It's always good to get different perspectives. So do you guys have anything to say before we wrap up?
No, I'm good. Thanks for the questions. I feel like we did the typical answer of it depends a lot, but it really does with nutrition. So getting down on the personal level, right? There's no one answer. If someone came up with one answer, they'd be a millionaire and sell the diet in a pill form, but that hasn't been a thing yet. I'm hoping to develop it, so be on the lookout. But thank you all for your time and questions. Appreciated.
All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. So thank you all and have a great rest of your afternoon.